subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com. Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
I love my state. I love the Republican Party. It's a hard thing. Ask my mama. Mother, stand up. It's my mother. This is about the future. I love you. Thank you for being bold enough to let me speak when the pressure was on to silence me. She deserves a standing ovation.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thunderous applause. Thunderous applause. That audio you just heard was Jan Morgan from the Mississippi County Lincoln Reagan Day dinner. And it was quite an event. It was a packed house. Jan Morgan was responsible for that packed house. Her message resonated, and that to me was the most powerful portion of the speech when she referred to the pressure that was mounting for her to be uninvited from that event. And yet, listen to what she said, not to silence me. She's talking about essentially a pretty basic concept, the freedom of speech, and how there were people in the Republican establishment trying to stop that, trying to stop her ideas. And I can tell you that we have new developments after that speech and after that amazing event that resonated so well with the people of Mississippi County. Word has spread, and unfortunately now you have the Sebastian County Republican Women's Group has now uninvited Jan Morgan to speak at their event, signaling that the Republican Party is very worried of ideas, and they are scared that the truth may get out. Joining me now to talk more about this is the lady of the hour. Jan Morgan joins us. Jan, welcome back to the program. With us, Jan, you did a great job at Mississippi County.
Thank you, Paul. It's easy to deliver the right message when it's the truth and when it's the message that the people want delivered. That's what I keep trying to tell the Republican Party. This is not about Jan Morgan. It's about the people of this state. The people spoke a resounding message when they elected Donald Trump in the state of Arkansas. They were trying to send a message to the establishment, and apparently the establishment didn't get it, so I'm trying to send it again. And so when they shut me out, they're shutting out the people of this state.
Mm-hmm. And we did talk about the news that broke earlier on your Facebook page, it was out there, that the Sebastian County Republican Women's Group has now uninvited you to speak at their event. And I'm telling you, this is in direct result of how your message is resonating with the people. I mean, listen to the applause that we played there, where you said, thank you for standing up and not silencing me. And people went nuts because they all knew that the establishment didn't want you there last night. And now we have some dominoes start to fall. We have people trying to fall in line, it seems like.
Exactly. And, that's going to hurt them more than help them, because what they think that I will do is just silently cower down and get my feelings hurt, say, oh, the Republican Party doesn't want me in. But see, what that does is validate what I've been saying all along, that we have a problem within the Republican Party of this state. And I talked about this openly in my speech. I said, look, I'm not here to divide the party. The party is already divided in a very big way. But here's a novel idea. There's a place that we can all come together. I'm here to help save the party, and I'm telling you that place that we can all meet is the Republican Party platform, right? the Republican Party platform. What's controversial about that? Well, I'll tell you what's controversial about it. You've got a progressive governor who doesn't want to lead the state that way. And you've got people who are riding his coattails who are scared to buck him. So I'm out there throwing the grenade, and the conservatives in the Republican Party who are too cowardly to stand up are egging me on, saying, you go, Jan, tell them, you tell them, but let us hide behind you and generate the results of that. So, I can't single-handedly save the party, but I tell you what, the people.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program today. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and we want you to be a part of it. One of the ways is to call or text 870-275-9799 or sound off on our Facebook Live feed, which is facebook.com/Paul Talk Show. All right, so coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with a former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research. Going to be talking to Mr. David Ferguson. You want to stay tuned for that. It's going to be a great discussion on tax reform and the status quo here in Arkansas. Then at the top of the next hour, we're going to be talking with Dr. Dick Carpenter, who is the Director of Strategic Research for the Institute for Justice. Now, specifically, we're going to be talking about his expertise on license to work and occupational licensing in general. He's done some amazing studies, and really this is going to echo a lot of what we've heard from the Arkansas Center for Research in Economics. As a matter of fact, he's coming to Arkansas to speak. Dr. Dick Carpenter is. I have a quote here. We hope you'll join us on Thursday, November 16th at 1:40 p.m. at the UCA College of Business Auditorium, where Dr. Dick Carpenter will be speaking about the state of occupational licensing in Arkansas. In a 2012 report, Arkansas ranked as the second most burdensome in terms of licensing laws and the fifth most extensively and onerously licensed state. Among other things, Carpenter will discuss how Arkansas's rankings have changed in the last 5 years and what practical steps Arkansas or Arkansans could take to improve in the future. Again, that's coming up at 5 o'clock. But I want to start with the latest Conduit for Action article that we did not get to cover yesterday, but it was really good because it summarizes our coverage that you heard on this program last week concerning the meetings of the Arkansas tax farce or tax force, depending on how you want to look at it. That's supposed to be about tax cuts, or at least that's what we were told, tax reform and tax relief. But yesterday, last week, the majority of the topics in the news were really about new revenue that they could get from us by ending this tax exemption or that tax exemption. And, of course, here's the whole thing. It's all about mentality. I mean, you can certainly envision a world where you cut exemptions, because I'm no fan of carve-outs. And look, this crowd can't really say that they're not fans of carve-outs either. They can't say that because they passed a military retirement tax cut carving out an exemption for them while raising taxes on candy and soda and creating a new tax on digital downloads using the internet for your ringtones and ebooks and things like that. And it wasn't even revenue neutral. They figured out a way to get $8.9 million more after the quote-unquote military retirement tax cut after they passed it than they did before. So they're already taking more from us. And so it's all about the mentality. It's all about, are you trying to protect at all costs the amount of money that the government is currently getting today? And unfortunately, that seems to... Now, I thought these were the people's representatives. I don't think the people are as concerned with that as much as they're concerned with getting relief from the amount of money that we're already sending them, that they're spending, because, quite frankly, we are overtaxed as a state right now.
And if that doesn't clearly send a message that we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem, that they created an exemption with a quote-unquote revenue neutral bill, and it somehow became a tax or an increase where they got more money than they expected.
Exactly.
If that doesn't show that we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem, in the eyes of Asa Hutchinson and some of his establishment members, I don't know what will.
Well, and it also says you can't trust these guys. I mean, and we can demonstrate you can't trust the Republican establishment in Arkansas. When they tell you this is what a bill's going to do, it's getting pretty easy to just assume that the opposite is true of whatever they're saying. They never lose credibility. They just continue to tax and spend and grow government. And it's really frustrating because, I mean, honestly, we're to the point after the military retirement debacle, and that's what it was, where they used our soldiers as a prop at this point to get more money for the government. I mean, let's be honest. They used our soldiers as a prop to get more money that they're now putting the excess in the with the Medicaid trust fund. If they come out and say, or the tax farce, they say, hey, we're going to recommend revenue neutral tax cuts, which, by the way, the lieutenant governor, at least Tim Griffin, has said, well, you shouldn't do that. Rand Paul on the national level has warned D.C. that revenue neutral tax cuts are not real tax cuts, and he's exactly right. But if they come out at this point and say we want revenue neutral tax cuts, run for the hills. How are we supposed to believe them? They said that the military retirement bill was revenue neutral. So that would mean that was the only bright spot. That was the only bright spot in that. If you could get past... If you could get past, they were raising taxes elsewhere, and as they raised taxes on candy and soda, they decreased taxes on the syrup industry, so the candy and soda people soda people would be okay. So there was some political jockeying there, but then they created a new tax on digital downloads. Even if you could get past all of that, at least you could say, well, it was a revenue neutral bill. But it's not a revenue neutral bill. We now know that. We now know, according to the Bureau of Legislative Research, it's a net tax increase. The government is now getting more money from the people than they were before they started down this path, using our military retirees as props, saying if you don't support a digital downloads tax, you're against the troops. And this is from a Republican, end quote, led state. So there's a huge trust gap, and it's been developing a while. You can't really trust if Asa says, which I don't even know if he says this anymore, but if he says anything that sounds conservative, he's certainly not going to say, I believe in shrinking government. I don't know if I've ever heard him say that. But if he says something that sounds conservative, you can't trust him. You have to parse his words, and you can kind of figure out where he's leaving room for it to not happen. You can't trust the establishment that goes along with him because they parrot these same ideas. You can't trust the leadership about this stuff. There's a huge trust gap, and I really think it's going to come back to bite them eventually. I mean, the people are figuring out the truth. So the news last week on the tax farce, you go to conduitforaction.org, and we can see this article here. It's extremely thorough. Tax force looking task force looking for more places to collect the tax. And the subheadline here, getting the cart before the horse. Last week, the legislature's task force on taxes discussed the existing tax exemptions to Arkansas's tax laws. Reviewing the many exemptions in Arkansas's tax laws is a good thing, Conduit for Action writes. It's a good thing to do periodically. But here's the catch. The task force is looking for places to get more tax money. And while the tax force is looking for more places to collect more taxes, it's ignoring Arkansas's obvious problem. Number one, Arkansas needs to lower its taxes because we're the high-tax state. Arkansas is a high-tax state, and when you compare us to the borders, the states that touch our borders, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's unexcusable. That's the problem. And yet, what they want to do, my suspicion is they want to lower your taxes here so they can say that they did and convince you, in this area, income tax or whatever, we've lowered your taxes. Congratulations to us. But we've raised them everywhere else to make up for it. Instead of reducing spending and cutting taxes. They don't want to reduce spending. And if you look at the budget, there's a big reason why. The 800-pound gorilla in the room, Medicaid expansion, Obamacare, private option, Arkansas Works, welfare for able-to-work adults that we have to now pay 10% of. And we can't even afford the 5% we're paying now. That's the elephant in the room. That's why they don't want to cut spending, because we don't have the money. They've got to find. You know what they really want to do? They want to raise your taxes without you knowing about it. Military retirement. We've seen the scheme. The military retirement bill, in my prediction, is going to be a microcosm of what they're going to hope to do when it comes down to whatever recommendation they will. If you look at that as a map, if you were to look at the military retirement tax scam as a map, what did they do? They took a valuable constituency that we all love, our military and our troops that are courageous, and then they used that to put conservatives, true conservatives, into a really difficult position because they were hearing from American Legion chapters and things like that about what they wanted, because the American Legion folks and the military folks were being used. They were only getting the good part of the bill for them, which was that their military retirement was going to be exempt from taxes. That's all that they knew. They didn't know about digital downloads, candy and soda, and everything else. And I promise you, a lot of them don't know that it's now a next net tax increase. And by the way, what about the other veterans who aren't in retirement? They're having to pay the increased tax on candy and soda. They're having to pay the tax on digital downloads. As a matter of fact, military retirees are having to pay the digital download tax on, if you use the internet. The whole thing was a scam. It was just a scam. It was carefully crafted language, and you can see this as a roadmap to what they want to do next. Let's pick an issue. Let's use the pain point politics concept. Let's put conservatives in a difficult situation, and let's ram it through. And then let's come out with our talking points that said we did such an amazing job, and let's ignore when the real facts come out that the government's going to get more money than they did before. You know what? If you want more money, if you want more money, why don't you just show a little bit of faith in the tax policy that we know that works, that John F. Kennedy believed in? Why don't you show a little faith in cutting taxes, getting spending under control, and then see what happens when the jobs are created and you actually do get more revenue after the private sector economy grows? Then you can have your money. But you got to have the right philosophy at the top. You actually got to believe that this stuff works, and we've seen historically that it does. But you have to get spending under control. Just go look. Go look. Harding, Coolidge, the Roaring 20s, okay? Go take a look at this. Yeah, exactly. There is a reason they were roaring, Joe. Thank you. Back to this article. Number 2, Arkansas spends too much on state government. Arkansas spends more per person than most states. The legislature should be busy determining which Arkansas tax rates should be cut to make Arkansas competitive with other states and to give relief to Arkansas taxpayers. If the task force won't do it, the Revenue and Tax Committees of the Senate and House should start work immediately and bypass the tax force. Wouldn't that be great if the House and Senate Revenue and Tax... Oh, well, the Senate Revenue and Tax is chaired by Jake Files. Jake Files. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know about him. I don't know about...
He's too busy being a consultant right now in Texas.
Oh, yeah, solar panel consultant. Yeah, that
he's
was
not
in the
coming
news.
back.
Yeah, that's true. Well, he will for ACES to, yes vote if they have a special session or something like that. Yeah.
If Asa knows what's good for him, he won't call Jake Files back. If he has any lick of sense, he's not calling Jake Files
I just mean
back
if there's a special session, Jake Files got to do his job according to right now. I mean, apparently he is the moral standard of the Republican Party right now here in Arkansas.
Let me rephrase then. If Asa knows what's good for him, he will try to avoid as much as possible making sure Jake Files doesn't come back up here for any reason. That means no special sessions called. That means nothing like that.
Well, see, Joe, I appreciate your your advice, but I mean, Jay, if it was a matter of not coming to Little Rock, they would have secured that possibility by getting him to resign.
Well, let me be clear.
Even publicly calling for his resignation, which they refused to do. So I understand what you're saying. I get it.
Well, I want to make a point with this. That with the statement of, if Asa has any lick of sense,
okay,
he will not call Files back up here.
You did say that both times.
That's making sure that Asa has sense not to do something that's stupid.
Yeah, well,
who knows?
It's still, and back when we found out that Jake Files was mentioned in that affidavit, FBI affidavit for wire fraud, he's still in office. And, at this point, my analysis is pretty much correct. They're avoiding, by him refusing to resign, by the Republican Party not demanding his resignation, by Asa not demanding his resignation, they are avoiding a special election. I mean, they are trying to avoid a special election so that, what appears to me, so that current state representative Matt Pitch will be able to run for the open seat. And that's what's so sad is, I mean, to go on like this, it presumes that Senator Files is an adequate representative for Fort Smith,
or reason they're not calling a special session, tinfoil hat on time.
No,
is because they're trying to keep Files' name out of the papers and out of the news and out of the spotlight as much as possible. Of course, there's going to be his name's going to be in there at some point with FBI looking into him, but as much as possible, so they're not looking into other things like the public.
Tinfoil hat, yeah.
Tinfoil hat, ladies and gentlemen.
Well,
it's on snug and tight.
What Joe's referring to, and what we've been the special session. There has been a rumor ever since the session ended at the beginning of this year that Asa was going to call another session to try to ram through an internet sales tax. I don't think that that's going to happen now, because what it appears that what's happening now is they're just going to let the tax farce try to study, because that's one of the things last week. The tax farce was saying we got to have an internet sales tax. Look at all the money we would get with an internet sales tax. And again, this kind of fraction article we're going to revisit here when we come back from break. But number one, Arkansas needs to lower its taxes because we're not competitive with other states. And number two, Arkansas spends too much money on state government. Those are the two principles that the tax farce should be pursuing. And if the meetings from last week are any indication, that doesn't appear to be what they're wanting to do. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
The declaration will be a triumph. I tell you, a triumph. If I was ever sure of anything, I'm sure of that. A triumph. And if it isn't, we've still got 4 days left to think of something else.
All right, folks, welcome back. Okay, so the rage, a real quick little update from yesterday's program. I can tell online the rage is building that the Sebastian County Republican women disinvited Jan Morgan. At the same time, the enthusiasm is building because of what she did over in Mississippi County. And bottom line is this: freedom of speech, contending with the other side, or your political counterpart, or your political, I don't want to use the term enemy, but just, you know, your political opposition. I'm not afraid to debate the ideas, but it appears that members of the Republican Party are, and they want to silence a message that they believe is going to hurt those who are already in power. This is power trying to silence those who are not in power, and that is shameful. Back to this piece over at conduitforaction.org. The legislature should be busy determining which Arkansas tax rates should be cut to make Arkansas competitive with other states and give relief to Arkansas taxpayers. Moving down, let's talk about tax exemptions here. The latest tax exemption to make the news is Act 573 of 2015 by Senator Bart Hester. His legislation exempted property leased for billboards from the regular property tax rate based on fair market value and established a much lower rate based on cost. His legislation is now being challenged as not having received enough votes, and it is claimed he needed a 3/4 vote and did not receive it. Senator Hester is a member of the Tax Task Force. Hester has owned billboard land in the past and has land that is subject to a billboard easement, but is not receiving revenue from the easement. Let's look at the exemptions costing the state the most revenue. You may be surprised to learn the top 3 exemptions directly affect you. Gasoline on motor fuel, on which gas or fuel tax has already been paid, costing $325 million a year. Yes, you pay a gas tax, but since there is not Also a sales tax. It is considered an exemption for some reason. So if they got rid of that, that would be double taxation. There's also food, ingredients, prescription drugs. Check it out. It's at conduitforaction.org. Back in just a moment with Mr. David Ferguson. So you've cut.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Well, this state can, and the Republicans of this state, every time they uninvite me to an event, I get more support from Republicans in that area. And they say, well, you know what? Forget the Republican Party. We'll have an event for you, and we'll be separate from them. And so that's what we're going to see happen.
Yeah, there's no doubt that that's what's going to happen. So talk a little bit about, your message. I know this is part of your listening tour in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And I think what resonates with your message is the fact that you experienced something that's personal, that no one can take away from you when you were down at the Marble Palace and you saw the way the process was working, and you saw how, if everybody knows, and I've said this for a while, if the people knew what they were really doing in the people's name that they never find out about because nobody wants to cover, the local politics, the people would react accordingly and make another choice. And, you're considering being that other choice, and your story really resonates with the crowd.
Yes, because I went to the state capitol with the assumption that, I know there's politics as usual, but I assumed that there was going to be some accountability and transparency there because, after all, the people own the Marble Palace, and the people there who are supposed to be representing us, we're paying their salary. So I was appalled to discover, number one, of course, we don't have a revenue problem in Arkansas. We have a spending problem. I was appalled at the waste in our government with Republicans at the helm. That has to be fixed immediately. And then I discovered how they're able to get by with this is the lack of transparency. I discovered in judiciary that they have this group voice vote thing rather than a roll call vote. So the citizens of this state have no way of checking into the government website and saying, hey, I want to see how my Republican representative voted on this issue because this shouldn't have passed. That's not Republican Party. We have control of the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. Republicans do. So we should be moving. The conservative movement should be overwhelmingly taking the state back to fiscal responsibility, to deregulating businesses, to cutting taxes. I mean, there are so many things that this government should be doing under Republican leadership, and we're going the wrong direction. I just went to find out why, and I saw it. And I the things I saw and heard in the hallways and the deals being made behind closed doors, it was just revolting. And then when I went into House Judiciary to whip up on those boys, I took them to the woodshed, as those of us in the South would say, and I'm talking about our Republicans. And when I did it in a very public way, that's when thousands of Republicans across this state said, we need you to run for governor.
America, the birth of a new nation. If only we could be sure of what kind of a bird it's going to be. Tom has a point. What sort of bird shall we choose as the symbol of our new America?
The eagle.
The dove. The turkey.
The eagle.
The dove.
The eagle.
The eagle. The turkey.
The eagle is a majestic bird.
The eagle is a scavenger, a thief, and a coward. A symbol of over 10 centuries of European mischief.
The turkey.
The turkey is a truly noble bird. Native American, source of sustenance of our original settlers, an incredibly brave fellow who will not flinch at attacking a regiment of Englishmen, single-handedly. Therefore, the national bird of America is going to be...
The eagle.
The eagle.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We certainly appreciate you being with us, folks. This next segment is brought to you by Conduit for Commerce. You can check out the website, conduitforcommerce.org, because if you want to know about putting small business first, specifically Arkansas small business first, then you need to go to conduitforcommerce.org and look at their policy positions. The last couple of weeks, we've actually been talking about several of them, kind of leapfrogging over the one last week on performance-based budgeting, going back to the Tax Reform and Relief Task Force recommendations, this amazing piece recommended by Brenda Vassar-Taylor, and she even came on the program to talk about this, these recommendations to the task force. It's kind of hard to say it right when I don't have a lot of confidence in them. But joining us now to talk more about this during this segment, again sponsored by Conduit for Commerce, we have the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research, Mr. David Ferguson, is on the line, back on the program. David, welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yes, sir. So, as I look over, some of these recommendations and really just generally this whole process, let's talk first about the Revenue Stabilization Act, because you certainly know a lot about this act, and this is kind of a new concept where a lot of people are now starting to look at the Revenue Stabilization Act, and they're starting to think, I think maybe, they claim balanced budget, but it actually kind of guarantees that the government's going to continue to spend. What are your thoughts? How do you see the Revenue Stabilization Act?
Well, it really is a mechanism to spend as much as you have. And in this article, I would really recommend anybody, a small business owner, or anybody that's interested in Arkansas taxes, to look at this article by Brenda Vassar-Taylor from October the 31st. And she has great insight on the revenue stabilization. And also, she quotes a center from George Mason University. When I read some of their discussion about Arkansas taxes, I thought these folks must have stayed here for decades, because they've got it summed up when they say that our taxes wag the dog. If taxes go up, you spend more. If taxes go down, you spend less. So the revenue stabilization is a part of Arkansas's spending. It only deals with general revenues, and that's going to be your sales taxes and income taxes and those type of things, not set up for something, a dedicated source. But what happens is money comes into the system, and revenue stabilization was set up to say, okay, you're going to go through and come up with all these different budget recommendations, and you're going to tell agencies you have the authority to spend so much money. Revenue stabilization says we're going to classify this, and based on how much money comes in, that will determine what you get. So if revenue comes in slow, they'll have to cut back the budgets so that you don't spend more than you have. But it doesn't limit how much they want to spend. It actually turns out to be kind of a guarantee that you're going to spend just about everything. And here's how this works. They put different things into classifications. Classification A, their priority. B, lesser priority. And you get C, lesser priority. And years ago, I first became aware of it when some legislators were visiting with me, and they started talking about a new program that had been passed, and they were saying, we never intended for this thing to pass. This was something stupid. It's a waste of money, but we put it in category, let's say C, could have been a D back then, but we put it in the lowest category, not expecting it to ever be funded, and this way the legislator could say, look what I passed, look what I'm trying to do for my constituent, and then it not ever get funded. But unlike recent years, at that time there was more money that came in than they expected, and so it got funded, and all that money just was spent on something that they didn't really consider something they really cared about. They were just doing a favor for a legislator.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't thought of the political ramifications. And just to kind of summarize what you said, politician doesn't really care about it, but he, you and me both know, David, you know better than I do. Sometimes they pass, these politicians, they'll vote for something they have no idea what it's going to do, and it passes 100-0. And so you get one of these things. It's in there. It's funded, but you put it real low, and that's probably how it gets passed in the first place. It's not a priority. It's not going to get funded. You can go and you say, well, I passed your law for you, and then lo and behold, the money comes in, and it gets all the way down to that lower category, and it immediately goes out. It comes in and immediately goes out. And so that's guaranteeing the fact that they're spending almost everything that we give them. And right now, we're in a debate where I believe on the limited government side, we want them to cut spending and use that money to give us, to let us keep more of our own money. And so the Revenue Stabilization Act, it kind of seems, from what I'm hearing from you, may kind of be a hindrance to that.
Well, it actually serves a good purpose in keeping us from spending more of general revenue than we have. We actually incur other debts, or the state incurs debts. I'm not a part of that anymore, but state incurs debts. But the general revenue, it's a limitation on there, and especially after 9/11 and after the crash on the housing market and all that, there were cuts. So it served its purpose of not running out of money and have to call another session to redo the budget. But what it's become is just a crutch to not really look at the budget and just go ahead and approve a bigger budget than you really need. And I guess I should explain kind of how the budgeting happens. The governor comes in with recommendations for his budget, and his recommendations are really just changes in certain programs and stuff. The budget always starts with not what do you need, what do you deserve, is this an important program? It starts with how much money did you get last year? And then the governor may have some additional things that, additional programs, or switch a little bit of money around. But everything is driven by the revenue forecast in the governor's administration over at the Department of Finance Administration. They do an estimate of how much revenue comes in. Well, when they're doing the budget, you come with all these in with the same budget as last year with some changes, and then you say how much COLA, or how much increase can we give these? So they look at how much money they think is going to come in. They look at how much they want to give back as a kind of a tithe. Conduits call it a tithe of additional revenues. They take a little piece of it and claim, look at the tax relief we've done. But they look at all that budget. How much do we need to increase? And then they say, okay, we need increases in these areas. This means we have this much money left over, scattered among the agencies. That's going to give them, a 5-6% increase, sometimes a lot less. But, it's going to give them an increase of a certain amount. So what's missing out of the process is, do we really need this program? Well, once it gets in there, it's going to be approved over and over again. And a lot of the budget process that happens when legislators grill an agency, it's more about complaints by their constituents. A budget hold on a budget for an agency because they're mad at, there are certain legislators mad at an agency because of a constituent, and they just hold that toward the end, and then they release all those. I mean, the agencies know that eventually all of them will be released because they're not going to let a disturbance mess up the budget. But another piece they mess with, they go, okay, in these bills, we're going to include money for a merit increased or a cost of living increased employees. Well, after they figure out how much they're going to give to the state agencies, then they can come in and decide, do we have enough money for state employees to have an increase? It's all driven by how much money. Now, toward the end of the year, there's always some money that is collected late and doesn't get put into the budgets. That gets rolled over into these surplus funds, and that's what happened, how they started doing all the general improvement funds and rainy day funds and all that. So all that money, even if it's collected late and not able to be distributed, it's going to be picked up and spent pretty much in the next year. So we don't really have much in the way of any kind of reserve or any good plan on trying to reduce our taxes, because we're spending everything we have.
Yeah.
And that's not something, that's not an Asa Hutchinson thing. That is pretty much how the system has worked throughout the years. It's just that money has been tighter, and there's been more push by this particular administration on trying to raise the number of taxes. I can't recall in the 8 years of Beebe, I don't recall much in the way of any additions, but he actually worked over several years to reduce the sales tax on groceries, kind of out of what was considered growth. But it's always an expanding thing, and if you just base your home spending based on how much you spent last month and a little more,
yeah,
you're never ever going to save anything. You're never ever going to prioritize anything, and you're going to have a crisis. So you're going to have a crisis. We don't have enough money for prisons or roads or whatever.
Yep.
It's just you spend everything so that you can have a crisis, so that you can raise taxes, and that's resulted in us being one of the higher tax states, and certainly higher than almost all the surrounding states.
So, going back to this Conduit for Commerce paper, here's a quote from it. Therefore, if you want spending reduced in Arkansas, if you want smaller government, you simply cut taxes. So because of the way the Revenue Stabilization Act is set up, where they tend to spend everything they get, if they don't get the money, they're not going to spend it. So, I mean, if we were to cut taxes, just cut taxes, government would automatically shrink, right?
It would have to under that law. If there's not enough, if they budget more than they bring in, it has to be cut. And usually when that kind of thing happens, they really want to go for more taxes. Which if you've cut them, it's kind of hard to do. But
let's cut them and then immediately raise them.
People tend to want to scream and holler and take the programs that hurt the most. I mean, this has been done in threats by the last two governors, at different times. We're going to have to cut something really terrible, but there's just never been a process to go through and look at, do these things have any need? Are they spending it wisely? I mean, I'll just give you one example. It was very frustrating. I've worked with a lot of people in legislative audit, and they audit the different agencies, state agencies. They do a great job. They've found out that an agency had spent quite a bit of money on trips that really didn't have much to do with business and more to do with visiting family. And so they wrote a report about it and criticized them. And then the governor's budget recommendations for that agency, the travel budget was doubled. So there's just not any monitoring anywhere in the system. And now we have annual budgets. Well, they don't even do much of a hearing in the second year. They just take the recommendations that they wrote down for the second year, 2 years before, and just use those unless they think there's a place to change here or there.
What you're describing to me, it sounds like it's the golden age for bureaucrats in Little Rock and has been for a very long time.
Well, I don't think you're going to find any bureaucrat that ever had enough money. So, I have to say that my agency was well funded. We didn't use it all, but that wasn't really the case. Most agencies, if they had money, they felt like they needed to use that.
Wow. We're talking with David Ferguson. He is the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research. We're talking about just tax reform in general, revenue stabilization. And I know you got to go, David, but I wanted to ask one more question. In the news recently, there's been what I consider misleading headlines. They'll compare revenue receipts from 1 month to maybe a year ago that same month, but then buried in like the body of the article, you hear that. But for the year overall, we are missing projections. Aside from the fact that Duncan Baird, the budget director for the governor, got a giant raise and missed projections last year. Why do they keep missing projections? Why? And then you see in the headlines buried that there is a shortfall. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's been a kind of a mystery for a long time. In fact, it was a problem when Mike Beebe was in the legislature. He wanted the legislature to really do budget projections. Of course, when he became governor, he didn't like them because the Bureau's projections were always better than the governor's. But those projections, it depends on what models you use. And also there's the politics of it, of whether you want to justify a budget and you put your projections up higher, or if you want to hold the possibility of tax cuts down, you lower your projections. So, depending on the politics of those projections, it's not an absolute thing. The politics of it, I believe, the politics of it affects those projections. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Bureau of Legislative Research is usually a lot more accurate, plus theirs comes out a little bit later. But
interesting.
Those projections, there's nothing in the projections. The way the money comes in always varies. Your corporate taxes are going to be very volatile and sometimes up and down, and sometimes they'll level out later on. It's like this last time. It was, the governor was talking about all these big cuts, and they didn't have any money at the end of the year. Well, golly, it came on in, and he restored at least half of it. Mm-hmm. So the projections,
hang on, David, which wasn't really a cut. What he restored was an increase in spending from the year, the previous year. So we got to make sure we make that point.
Right, that's true. That is true. It didn't cut things back. It just cut the increase back temporarily, but I just have to say that those projections are tough. You're projecting into the future when money will come in, how much growth there will be, and sometimes there may be growth, but it just has to be those times that corporations choose that point to claim some tax advantages that they're just doing it all across the country more because of federal law, mm-hmm. and you get hurt even though things are going up. So the projections, you have to use them, but there's always politics used in them.
Yeah, there's no question. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. What you brought up, we need to maybe explore a little more, and that's the partisanship behind government estimates in general. And that's really hard to nail down. And these projections are really what they seem to me to be, is they're projecting how much we're going to increase spending, next year, how much more we can spend this year than we could last year. David Ferguson, the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us, educate the audience, and be safe. We'll do it again soon.
Okay, enjoy your program.
All righty. Thank you, David. Folks, the Liberty Machine rolls on, back in just a moment.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues, from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. If you would like information about advertising or supporting the Paul Harrell Program and Conduit Media Group, call 870-275-9755. Join the fight against big government and advance the preservation of liberty by calling 870-275-9755. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, taking a look back at some of these exemptions the tax farce was looking at last week, and you gotta understand something here. This would cost you money. This number one is the big one. We just mentioned it. Looking at the exemptions costing the state the most revenue, and that's what the tax farce is now looking at because, again, they're not interested in making Arkansas competitive and getting spending under control with our tax policy. Instead, they're looking at what exemptions they could end, and some of that's healthy, but think about this one. Number one, gasoline or motor fuel of which gas or fuel tax has been paid, costing $325 million. So we already pay a gas tax, okay, but since there is not also a sales tax on the gas tax, they're saying that that could be considered an exemption, even though there's already a gas tax per gallon that gets passed on to the consumer. That would be double taxation, my friends, if you remove that, quote, exemption, just so you can get $325 million a year out of us. Food and food ingredients, that's an exemption. That costs $176 million. They're looking at getting rid of that one. And number three, prescription drugs, costing $143 million. And, if you got rid of all these carve-outs and exemptions, they're going to say, and we could decrease your taxes by an amazing amount of money. That's what they're going to say. Unfortunately, right now, folks, everything they say, their credibility is called into question based on past results and promises, and comparing the two. The next three most costly exemptions affect large portions of the state economy and indirectly affect taxpayers. Number 4, sales to any nonprofit hospital, sanitarium, or nursing home worth $104 million a year. Number 5, feed used in the commercial production of livestock and poultry, totaling $99 million a year. Again, these are the exemptions they're looking at getting rid of. Number 6, machinery and equipment used directly in manufacturing or processing, worth $85 million a year. These 6 exemptions may or may not be on the chopping block, according to Conduit for Action. But there are more exemptions to be examined. Reviewing tax exemptions is something the legislature does periodically and is something that needs to be done every few years. Again, the problem is the task force is looking for ways to collect more tax when they should be looking at how to reduce Arkansas's high tax rates. Let me say that again. They should be looking at ways to reduce Arkansas's high tax rates. Tax fairness cannot be found if the tax burden on Arkansas taxpayers remains higher than the tax burden on taxpayers in neighboring states. Ask your state senator and representative to address the real problem: high Arkansas taxes and high Arkansas state spending. Folks, we have one more hour coming your way next. Stay tuned.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this, and I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Because you're the only one who is not afraid to stand up to the establishment, and you're the only one with a large enough base to give this guy a run for his money. And so that's where we are. But speaking of money, Paul, we have to have it to run. That's going to be the deciding factor. That's why we're in exploratory, to see if the citizens of this state are going to back us with their finances as well as their word.
Yeah.
You know, it takes money to fight.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I know you guys do have a website for that, right?
We do. Well, you go to the Facebook page, Jan Morgan for Governor. It's there. I post it on my page. Every time I post anything about Arkansas, which is constantly, under there I put the link to donate. So,
yeah.
But we don't have to have what Asa has. He's got $1.5 million in his coffers, but we can fight with a lot less, just like we can run a government on a lot less. But we have to have the bare necessities.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely do. But your message is a winning message. I mean, it's just demonstrated by last night, and I know you've got other speaking engagements and other places that you're going to be. I think it is.
But I bet they're not going to be Republican engagements. It's going to be interesting to see how many Republican dominoes fall after that speech. When they saw the response of that crowd, I mean, that's the first time Doyle Webb, the state Republican Party chair, was there, which, by the way, I got reprimanded.
Yeah, tell me about that
table when I started talking about one specific example of waste, $20 million tossed, toward Department of Human Services on a contract when the Legislative Review Board that suggested the bid go the other way. When I started talking about that, I mean, the voice from that table was, careful, careful. I mean, it was loud. Everybody in the front 3 or 4 rows heard it.
Weird.
And I even acknowledged it. I looked over at the table and said, oh, I'm being reprimanded from the floor. How interesting is that? So, they're trying to silence me on so many fronts. And the bottom line is, when they're that afraid that they don't want the people to hear your message because they know if the people hear it, the people will support it, and then they lose their gravy train. So fear is pushing that whole let's uninvite Jan to speak agenda, and it makes them look bad, not me.
Yeah, and so much of this defense is also because Asa Hutchinson has such a terrible record. And that's just his
record is egregious,
yeah.
Paul, and I'm constantly posting it on my page, and he can't argue with it. It's all fact-based. That's the crazy thing. He's asking for another term as a Republican. Now, if he would run as a Democrat, he'd probably win the Democrat ticket,
yeah,
but
he would.
He's not.
Well, I mean, for example, so you mentioned the contract, the DHS contract. The current contract provider for this particular service was doing the job, $20 million or more cheaper, and yet Asa went with the one that was more expensive. And the legislatures were just saying, hey, we don't want to do this. He went ahead and did it anyway. When you just point out something like that, and that's basic, and to Little Rock, that's run of the mill. What's $20 million? But when you point out something like that, that's kind of minutia that they don't hear about, but it's very black and white from the Republican Party platform standpoint. It's like, why would he do that? And that is what you say, Jan, don't talk about that. You know, you can't talk about that. That's how bad his record is. You know, that's how bad it is.
Exactly, and unfortunately for them, I don't, they can't. All they can do is try to silence me, and so I expect a lot more of this, Paul. And fortunately, though, for me, you've got Tea Party organizations across this state and just Republicans who are mad at their own committees in their own counties for canceling me. They're planning events for me. So what are they going to do next? Call these people and say, we're going to come after your business if you have an event and host Jan Morgan. I mean, that's what we're getting down to, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and, you hate that for the Sebastian County, Republican women's organization because, I mean, you're a woman, Jan, and wouldn't that be great for their event? But they don't want to have you all of a sudden. That's just so
honestly,
sad.
Paul, that was the most disappointing uninvite I've received so far because it is women. And how often is a woman in a position that I'm in right now to truly bring about change and change toward the Republican Party platform, which is what all these women are supposed to represent. It is most unfortunate, and I know some women in leadership that are really upset about it, and I understand there was quite a bit of arguing about it behind the scenes, but in the end, the
maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. It's hour number 2. My name is Paul. Thank you so much for being with us. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and if you want to help us build it, one of the ways you can contribute is to call us or text us 870-275-9799, or you can sound off on our Facebook live feed, facebook.com/Paul Talk Show. I want to welcome to the program for the first time from the Institute for Justice. We have Dr. Dick Carpenter on the line, and he serves as the Director of Strategic Research. Dr. Carpenter, welcome to the program, sir.
Paul, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm really thrilled that you could do this, and I know you are also going to be in Arkansas on the campus of UCA, the College of Business Auditorium, this coming Thursday, November 16th at 1:40, and you're going to be giving a talk on occupational licensing in Arkansas. So I would assume that this is one of your, many studies over at the Institute for Justice, and please go ahead and tell us a little bit about what the Institute for Justice does.
Sure. So the Institute for Justice, or IJ, is a nonprofit public interest law firm that represents individuals whose most basic rights are violated by government. So we are a law firm that specializes in suing the government when the government impinges upon people's rights. We litigate in 4 areas. One is economic liberty, which occupational licensing is part of that, but also free speech, property rights, and educational choice. And one of the very first cases for us was on the issue of economic liberty, where we represented taxi drivers in Denver who wanted to break open what by then was a monopoly, to break that open so they could operate their own taxi businesses in Denver. And we won. We have been continuing to win on behalf of small business owners for the past 26 years.
Wow. And that's some great work. And, you can see, I mean, that taxi cab analogy is great because, with the invention, the new businesses like Uber or Lyft and things like that, we have seen that nationwide. People they have these aversions to not going through the proper channels. You also see it with, the hotel industry and the different services out there where people can rent their own places. And so it's really interesting to me when technology kind of outthinks government. People get in there, they start being entrepreneurial, they start, making money, creating jobs, and then everyone's like, whoa, 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 you didn't grease the right palms. And honestly, Dr. Carpenter, that's exactly the way I feel about most occupational licensing, is it's kind of, you're paying a fee. It feels kind of mob-like to me sometimes. And feel free to comment on that, and then talk a little bit about how Arkansas compares to other states with these licensed occupations.
Sure. So most people, I think, are familiar with the idea that their doctor or their attorney has a license. And I think most people generally know that their barber or their cosmetologist has a license. But I don't think many people realize just how many occupations today require a license that once upon a time did not, like auctioneers, sign language interpreters, locksmiths, furniture upholsterers, florists, crane operators, and the list goes on and on of these occupations that now require a license. An occupational license is a government permission slip to work. It means before you can go and hang your shingle out and work in the occupation of your choice, you have to get permission from the government to do so. And these licenses are created not because consumers go to the legislature and ask to be protected from unlicensed practitioners. These licenses are overwhelmingly created by members of the industry who go to the legislature and ask for the license to be created in their industry. It enables them to erect a fence around their occupation and keep competitors out. And so the cost associated with licensing, costs in the form of higher prices to consumers, fewer job opportunities, restricted interstate mobility and migration, all these costs are borne by us to benefit a much smaller group of people who enjoy an economic benefit as a result.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, just kind of doing that in my head here, I'm thinking, well, if you're making it harder on people to practice and therefore, they can't work legally, then there's less people with a skill set that's, legally you're able to purchase or use their services. That would seem that would drive the price of those services up.
Yes. You're creating a scarcity, right? So if we think about it in economic terms, when something is scarce, the price typically goes up, and so we're creating a false scarcity in the types of services or service providers that are within a market. And so by creating this false scarcity, it's basically inevitable that prices would go up on those services that are provided. And so we as consumers, we pay higher costs as a result.
So with Arkansas, because I know that's what your study is on, or one of them, can you compare us to other states? Because I'm curious about that. I mean, how do other states, when they go to license this occupation or that occupation, stack up against us?
Yes. So our study, which I'll talk about Thursday afternoon, is called License to Work. This is the second edition. We examined the licensing requirements of 102 low to moderate income occupations across all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And because we gathered all these requirements and did so consistently across all the states, that enabled us to rate and rank all of the states and all of the occupations based on how severe the burdens are to earn these licenses. So with Arkansas, what we found in the second edition was that, and we looked at three different things, I should say. One of them is we looked at the number of those 102 occupations that are licensed. So Arkansas actually licenses 72 of those 102. And that puts them pretty close to the top. The states with the most were 77. So Arkansas comes in pretty close to the top at 72.
Gosh.
And then we also measured how burdensome the licenses were. How difficult is it to earn these licenses? And When we compared Arkansas to other states, Arkansas came in 6th place as most burdensome. And then when you combine those two things, the number of occupations licensed and the burdensomeness of these licenses, you combine those two things into a single score, Arkansas came in 3rd as most widely and onerously licensed. And that's not so good.
No, it is not. No, it is not. I mean, the protectionist crowd here, I mean, they certainly have erected, like you said, the fences around their professions. And it's just obstacles, barriers to success. So that's the way I see it. And that is really, it really just shows you how much work we have to do. And, I would point out in our current political environment, I study it pretty close. We've had a lot of people voting for different parties than we had in the past, Republican instead of Democrat, and yet we don't have the reforms that I think many of us were voting for. We still kind of have the status quo on these things. Tell us, we're talking with Dr. Dick Carpenter, okay? He's from the Institute for Justice, and again, he's going to be at UCA this Thursday, so you certainly want to make plans to be there if you're anywhere in the listening area of Conway or the surrounding cities. I would encourage you to do this because it's a report. It's called License to Work, the first national study to measure how burdensome occupational license laws are. He's going to be talking about Arkansas. That's this Thursday, November 16th, 1:40 at the UCA College of Business Auditorium. So if you can, what is the most burdensome occupational license in your study, and which is the most burdensome in the state of Arkansas?
Sure. So across all of those that we studied, the single most burdensome license was interior designer. In 3 states in the District of Columbia, if you want to work as an interior designer, you have to have 6 years of education experience. You have to pass a national examination, and you have to pay almost $1,500 in fees to the state to work as an interior designer. In Arkansas, the single most burdensome license is for fire alarm installer. If you want to be a fire alarm installer in Arkansas, you have to have 5 years of experience. You have to pay almost $1,500 in fees, and you actually have to pass four examinations to work as a fire alarm installer.
Gosh, unbelievable. That is unbelievable to me. But hang on, at the same time, though, it's like I can see with the way, people use emotional arguments. I mean, because I can just see the arguments against if we were saying we want to, that's the most burdensome according to your study, we want to make that easier. The other side, the emotional argument is, well, we're talking about a fire alarm here, and we're talking about a house fire. We're talking about potential loss of life. I mean, so how do we balance that? Because, I mean, in my opinion, I wouldn't have a problem getting rid of it. Don't misunderstand me. Or severely lowering these requirements. 5 years, that sounds ridiculous. But you know what I'm saying? We are in an ideological battle, it seems. And the other side points to these, emotional arguments in some cases about potential fires and potential loss of life. So, they're going to say it's about the public safety. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So the word you used is correct, balance. How do we find that balance? So when the industries go and ask for a license, they will, as you said, typically say, we need to protect public health and safety, and therefore we need a license in order to achieve that. We hold open the possibility that there are occupations that would benefit from some form of government regulation, whether that's a license or some other forms of regulation that we can talk about. We hold open the possibility that that could be true. But before we do that, before legislatures create these licenses, there ought to be empirical, demonstrable evidence of a significant threat to public health and safety such that regulation is necessary. And if such evidence is put forward, then the appropriate level of regulation ought to be created. For too long, Paul, we've lived in this binary world where we've thought of occupational regulation as just basically no licensing and full licensing. But in fact, there's a menu of options in between that will include voluntary forms of regulation, like voluntary certification, for instance, or voluntary bonding and insurance. And then there are less onerous forms of government intervention, like registration systems, mandatory bonding and insurance, inspection systems, certification, private cause of action. So there are ways that the government can be part of that process, but not have to impose a full occupational license or to have the severe requirements that, for instance, fire alarm installer has in order to achieve the desirable outcome.
Yeah, and then you get, and I agree with what you said there. What about the licensing rules that can be proven, that are already in existence, that are proven have nothing to do with the public safety, but it's only about the fence, around the industry, paying, greasing somebody's palms, paying homage, paying tribute, I mean, here in Arkansas a couple of years ago, we did get one regulation. I wish we'd put all of the burdensome regulations that are not about the public safety into one bill, but it was like pulling teeth to get just one out of the cosmetology board allowing somebody to braid hair. That's all they did. They braided hair. Cosmetology was saying you need 1,500 hours, and the schools in her area didn't even offer hair braiding as training. She's been braiding hair for her whole life. I mean, I've got the testimony, and it was like pulling teeth. It barely passed, but thank goodness, if you want to braid hair, that's all you want to do. You don't have to have a license to do that. Some of these are clear cut, have nothing to do with the public safety. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, that's one of the reforms that we talk about in our report. We have a whole section on the different types of reform that could be instituted in the states, and this is one of them, where there is just simply no clear relationship between the licensing requirements and protection of public health and safety. In such cases, our recommendation is those licenses can be eliminated entirely. There may be other licenses where some demonstrable evidence exists that there is some threat to public health and safety. There is some sort of need for intervention. If so, then match up the appropriate type of regulation, like I was talking about before, to address that certain type of need.
Yeah.
So the reforms that we recommend will range anywhere from reducing the burdens of certain licenses to eliminating licenses altogether.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, and this just, dawned on me, I've thought about this before, but this really is all about risk. And I think there's some people that want to, lessen the potential risk to consumers. But I feel like there's some that want to try to eliminate it. And I don't think that's possible. And I think if you approach it from a concept of government saying we're trying to make sure, when people are out there, voluntary cooperations in an economy, in service, that nothing bad ever happens to them. If you approach it from that mentality, you're not going to have very much freedom to work.
Oh, but Paul, keep in mind that a license doesn't eliminate that. Bernie Madoff was licensed.
Oh, God.
There was a funeral director in Georgia that was pitching dead bodies behind his establishment out in the woods. I don't know if you remember that story several years ago.
Wow.
He was licensed. Public school teachers that have sex with their students, they're licensed. Licensing doesn't stop that type of behavior. And I would suggest that there are other means beyond just licensing where we can convey even greater amounts of useful information than ever before, and that is with consumer review websites like Yelp, for instance, or Angie's List, or Home Advisor, or Google Reviews, or any number of these websites out there. I can dial them up, and on my phone, I can get more information about service providers than any licensing scheme can ever provide.
That is a great point. That's a fantastic point. And I think that's where we're going to leave it. Dr. Dick Carpenter, you are the Director of Strategic Research for the Institute for Justice. I so appreciate you being on the program. And again, I just want to encourage everybody who's in the Conway area, if you're listening to this, just know on November 16th, it's this Thursday, we had is that Thursday or what's today? The 14th. Yeah. So this Thursday, the UCA College of Business Auditorium, he'll be discussing this, how it affects Arkansas, and I believe this is all being done. The Arkansas Center for Research and Economics is putting this thing on. And so, Dr. Dick Carpenter, it's been a pleasure to meet you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Take care.
All righty, folks, we have got to go. And we'll be back here in just a moment. Fascinating stuff. Arkansas's got a lot of work to do. Back in a minute. Protecting your business means protecting your data. But is your business really prepared to handle the growing threat of things like cybercriminals and ransomware? At iTex, they're committed to deploying the best security solutions to protect your business and your bottom line. Security threats are constantly evolving. So are security needs. Be proactive now and equip your business with the best cybersecurity available with iTex. Call them today for a free consultation at 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Welcome to the Arkansas Obamacare Hotline. We would be more than happy to help you enroll in Arkansas Obamacare today. We just need a little information about you. Let's get started. If you're disabled, pregnant, or looking for medical care for your child, the program is currently full, and there's no doctors to see you. Please hang up now. If you're an able-bodied adult, please press 1. If you're currently employed, we're sorry, but you most likely do not qualify for the program. Please quit your job and call back later. If you don't work and instead play video games all day with your cats in your grandmother's basement, please press 1. If you've never lived in Arkansas, press 1. If you currently live in another state, press 1. If you recently purchased a home in New Jersey for $750,000, please press 1. If your current identity has previously been used by another person, was created before your actual date of birth, or doesn't really exist, please press 1. Congratulations! It sounds like you're the perfect candidate to receive Arkansas Obamacare. Please stay on the line, and a hardworking DHS employee will be with you as soon as possible. While you're waiting, feel free to relax as your ambitions to gainful employment fade away. PHP Parody.
Now then, attend, as friend to friend, our declaration committee. For us I see immortality in Philadelphia City.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 870-275-9799. In other news, we have a court refusing to let Arkansas halt Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. The court refusal allows Arkansas to halt funding. Be very clear about that. This is no doubt a victory for those who are pro-life and believe that we have witnessed since 1974 an American genocide. 54 million children dead. More than that if you consider the babies would have had. And so it is amazing. This is a big deal. I'm not going to... this is really good. It is. Federal Appeals Court declined on Monday to revisit a 3-judge panel's decision that Arkansas can discontinue Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. The 3 unnamed patients who sued the Arkansas DHS after the funding cutoff was announced 2 years ago. And who did the funding cutoff? Governor Asa Hutchinson. This was in the wake of Planned Parenthood selling baby body parts for profit, saying that it has no value developing the way God intended, had no value in the mother's womb, had no value allowing the human DNA to mature and form flesh and blood or more of it. But it does have value if it's not alive. It does have value if the baby's dead. If life leaves the baby, then it does have value, but it's not valuable alive. It was an absolutely incredible story of who we have become as a whole, as a nation. And so Asa did the appropriate thing, and he defunded Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. They took us to court, and now we're apparently, for now, we're going to be able to continue to not fund this. Back in a minute.
Welcome those of you watching at paulharrell.com, Facebook Live, or our YouTube page, The Paul Harrell Program. This is the set where we shoot our Wednesday weekly videos for our Patreon subscribers. And if you want to get on board and get extra Paul Harrell Program content because you want to partner with us, you believe the show has value, you want to help us keep the show on the air, you want to help us grow the show, you want to help us make videos like this one even better, then you need to seriously think about subscribing to Patreon. It's patreon.com/thephp. That's patreon.com/thephp. Get extra content today, partner with us, and help build the Liberty Machine. We're asking you to partner with us for as little as $5 a month. Now, you can go up from there. You can go to $10 a month and get extra features, or $25 a month and become a Conduit Media Insider. But for $5 a month, you can really help us out. You can get extra content. You can see what we talk about on sets like this. And I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching. Back in a moment.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
The cowardly side won.
Well,
let's just don't have her.
I do want to say this. There is a Northwest Arkansas senator, it's come to my attention, going around and saying that at committee meetings or Republican events, it's against the rules to criticize a current elected official during their meetings. and I will tell you that is blatantly false. Conduit Media has checked into that. It's not against the rules. There's no such rule that exists, even on the county level or the state level. That is a complete lie. But I have a feeling that Jan, is also what is playing a role here. There are people in the establishment who are going around telling these committees and groups, that it's against the rules when, in fact, it's not.
But, Paul, the thing is, what the Republican women should have done, what I would have done if I were a leader of the Republican women of this state, I would have simply said, hey, Jan, look, we've got a problem here because you're a candidate and, or a potential candidate, can we not go into the campaign issue? Can we make this about women and the conservative movement and a positive message just about women moving forward and what, how much we've grown as conservatives and what women are doing on the state level and nationally. I mean, look at Kellyanne Conway. Women are making great strides in the Republican Party. Well, Jan Morgan is not a big feminist. I'm just not. Never have been. Don't desire to be. I am not. But I could have kept a speech to that realm for that event had they asked me or had they allowed me. But no, they don't want me to appear at all. They don't want other women in the state to see me because they might actually like me and agree with me and say, you know what, we want her to represent us.
Yeah, we could follow her. She's a leader.
Exactly.
So exactly. Sad. Well, Jan Morgan, I just want to say it was great seeing you at the Mississippi County event. And again, kudos to Mississippi County for standing up to the pressure. You hit the nail on the head. Your speech, I listened to it because I know I couldn't hear the whole thing, but I mean, I listened to the recording. It's really, really good stuff. And I appreciate you standing up, Jan. And I appreciate, and I know you're not going to sit down. I mean, I don't care how many Republicans uninvite you. You're going to keep going.
You heard my speech in House Judiciary. You heard my speech the other night. I started this gunfight, and I don't leave in the middle of a fight. They'll either have to take me out or I'll win, one way or the other. So
Jan
not
Morgan.
over till it's over.
That's exactly right, Jan. Thank you so much. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Okay.
The eagle's going to crack the shell of the egg that England laid. Yes, so we can tell on this humid Monday morning in this congressional incubator.
And just as Tom here has written, though the shell may belong to Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
And just as Tom here has written, we say to hell with Great Britain, the eagle inside belongs to us.
Okay, so this piece, the Democrat Gazette, it is by Hunter Field. And again, we were just talking about this. The news is that yesterday a federal appeals court declined to revisit a 3-judge decision that Arkansas can, in fact, discontinue Medicaid funding to Planned Parenthood. The reason I want to park here just for a moment is for a couple reasons. One, I want to examine the media bias in this story. It's pretty frustrating. But two, I do want to say, okay, so this is a decision that Governor Asa Hutchinson made. As a result of Governor Asa Hutchinson saying we're not going to fund Planned Parenthood of the Heartland here in Arkansas, the 2 abortion clinics in Little Rock and Fayetteville. We're not going to reimburse Medicaid, and we're not going to do this anymore because it was obvious. I mean, it was. Let's just be clear: the easiest decision that anybody could ever make. You have these videos showing that they are haggling over the price of baby body parts, over a nice dinner and a nice Merlot, and it was disgusting. It was. Honestly, it made me so fearful of just what we had become as a country. I'm going to be honest. And you had Hillary Clinton on the horizon, potentially being the next president of the United States. I mean, this was a huge deal. This was just awful. Absolutely awful. I mean, our evil in this country on full display. You know what I'm saying? Like something out of the Hunger Games. Can we talk about that? The baby body parts video was like something out of the Hunger Games, where violence and this gladiator type combat and people are just okay. Well, we'll just accept this convention of society as death, and we do this to keep the districts in line, and we have these amazing parties, and we have watch parties and everything else, and we sip our wine, meanwhile we got 13, 14-year-old kids dying in combat. If you've ever seen the Hunger Games, it's about a totalitarian society that does that, right? Each state or district, think of them as states, puts forth a candidate, and then they all come together, and you have the central capital that's really nice, and as you get further from the capital, the civilizations get, the infrastructure just get crappier and crappier. That's the only way I know to put it, and poorer and poorer and that sort of thing. But each one has to put up a candidate, and then they all fight to the death. And if they all die, fine. If one lives, fine too. So then they're champions or whatever. It's like that. It's so casual. The scenes at the Capitol, they're just so casual. Like, yeah, okay, and yet they're participating in something that is extremely evil. That's what those videos, but way worse because it's real life. That's what those videos remind you of. Something out of a movie. Something out of a movie where they're discussing, it's awful. It's awful. I mean, think about this for a second. What's the difference? Anybody ever see the Tim Burton movie Batman Returns? Yeah, Batman Returns was a terrible movie in terms of, the sequel to the second one because it was so dark. And Tim Burton really took it dark. The Penguin wasn't a kid-friendly movie. It was just a big deal. But you know what his plan was? You know what his grandiose, evil plan was? It was to lure all the firstborn children in that movie to the sewer so he could drown them. That was the plan of the villain in Batman Returns. Something that is clearly, Batman is good. Yeah, maybe a little conflicted anti-hero, but you know what I'm saying? Batman is good. The other bad guys are evil. Very black and white type stuff. Okay, whatever, Joe. I'm not parsing words, okay? Whatever. Black and white, good versus evil. Penguins. My point is, everybody was appalled by that, and yet now abortion's perfectly fine. And fast forward to, decades later, we're sipping some Chardonnay, and we're talking about how much I'll sell you an arm for that was of no value when it was attached to the baby, but now it is of value now that it's not. I mean, it's disgusting. It is a level of evil that it just made me very worried for this country.
They got their glasses of Chardonnay going, it's time for the culling once more.
Yeah, exactly. Sip. It is extreme. They might as well have said that because they're just so matter-of-fact about it all. So my point is, it was a national outrage. And Asa, the governor, did the right thing here. But it's not a hard decision. It's not a hard decision at all to make. It is low-hanging fruit. And that's my first point about this. It's great. We're able to defund. Second point is this. Taxpayer dollars are not supposed to go to fund abortion, yet they do. Taxpayer dollars in Arkansas are not supposed to go to fund abortion, but they do. And yet, I mean, let's think about this. With the private option, you have people that are paying for private insurance plans. That's your money. And now, whether it's federal tax or state tax, but now it is state tax because we're paying a portion of it. 300,000 people at $500 a month, right? And if we're honest about it, those insurance policies that we're paying for are going to cover abortions. It's the bottom line. Everybody knows it, but somehow our Republicans get a pass on it. They continue to support this thing, even though, if you look into it, technically, taxpayer dollars are going to fund policies that will cover abortions. Nobody ever wants to talk about it. It's pretty sad. You see, even on the social issues, they just can't seem to vote the social issues, the low-hanging fruit, when push comes to shove and enough people tell them, don't worry about it, the money, we need the money. It's amazing when you think of it that way. I mean, it's an exercise in depression, really, because it makes you very depressed. Phone number is 870-275-9799. The third thing I'm going to say is about this article, Hunter Field, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Let me read this to you, okay? The ruling that Arkansas can defund Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, and really what this means is when somebody files that particular Medicaid code to get reimbursed, meaning the abortion clinics in Fayetteville and Little Rock, when they file that Medicaid code, they're not going to be able to get any money anymore. The ruling comes 2 years after Governor Asa Hutchinson decided to end the state's contract with Planned Parenthood after anti-abortion activists released secretly recorded videos. Stop. Secretly recorded videos that showed what exactly, Hunter? Secretly recorded videos that showed what? Can you believe that? Can you believe they don't mention that? Man, I'm telling you. It's amazing to me how easy my job is sometimes when you can pick out the liberal bias so easily, right? This is the way it used to be. This story is the way it used to be. Before Republicans got into office and the establishment betrayed true conservatism, you would see stories like this all the time. And the reason there's bias here is because it's a national issue. That's why there's bias. Somebody explain to me why, on the state issues, though, apparently the Arkansas mainstream media has become conservative because all they can do is prop up the people who are in power, and they're Republicans claiming to be conservative but growing government instead. This makes me very upset, and the reason it makes me upset is I'm having flashbacks as to how easy my job used to be, which is pointing out the ridiculousness of the left who identify as Democrats. My job is so much harder now because I have to decipher between a Republican that means what they say and a Republican who does the opposite of what they say. And it is infuriating. If you want to be honest, if I'm honest about it, it's absolutely maddening to me. But let me go along. I mean, this is how easy. Let me go along. Let me kind of revel in how easy this can be, and we'll keep going. So he doesn't. This guy, Mr. Field, doesn't really talk about how what was in the videos until the end of the article. The ruling comes 2 years after Governor Hutchinson decided to end the state's contract with Planned Parenthood after anti-abortion activists released secretly recorded videos. The plaintiffs are now considering their next steps, so this may not be over, but it is a victory. One of the attorneys representing the patients said, an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court is possible, but they could also exhaust other options in a lower court or through the state's administrative appeal process. Listen, there's obscure reporting out there that Jeff Sessions is going to prosecute Planned Parenthood for the body parts thing. It's a clear violation of the law. I mean, there's clear criminal activity discussed on those videos, period. Once that happens, we will turn off the Medicaid provider number. That's according to Amy Webb from the DHS. She's the DHS spokesperson, talking about how once they get an order from the court, they will discontinue funding this. A spokesman for Planned Parenthood Great Plains, which oversees the provider's 2 Arkansas clinics, said the clinics are continuing to see Medicaid recipients. Well, we better get that order soon then. Planned Parenthood Great Plains is committed, this is their statement, to ensuring all patients in Arkansas retain the right to choose their provider, no matter their socioeconomic status. Let's see here. We keep going and keep going and keep going. Court's decision underscores the divide among federal appellate. Let me see here. Now, see, here's the part of the article that kind of bugged me. It says none of Arkansas's Medicaid dollars go towards abortions because of a state law preventing such funding, and yet our state dollars are going to pay for Medicaid expansion policies that will cover abortions. That's not mentioned here. See how easy this is? Let's go to the end of the article here. They describe what the videos say, or what the videos showed. Quote, the videos, which were recorded secretly by anti-abortion group Center for Medical Progress, purported to show that some clinics in other states had profited from allowing patients to donate fetal tissue to medical research after abortions. That's the description of what was on the tapes in this article. Can you believe that? That's unbelievable. The videos, which were recorded secretly by an anti-abortion group, Center for Medical Progress, purported to show that some clinics in other states had profited from allowing patients to donate fetal tissue to medical research after abortions. And then they even say this. They apologize for Planned Parenthood in this piece in the Gazette. However, Planned Parenthood has noted that more than a dozen states have cleared the provider of wrongdoing after investigating. Making sure Planned Parenthood's reputation is sterling. Oh my gosh, this just burns me up. Does it burn you guys up? Is that how you would have described what the videos showed? They purported to show that some clinics had profited. You mean sold? I mean, it might as well have been a slave auction. The videos might as well have been a slave auction, except a slave auction would have been better because the people they were buying and selling would have still been alive and in one piece. Gosh. I hope this segment has demonstrated to you how this is something that we all agree on. A vast majority of us agree on. Okay. It's obvious. And I want you to use this segment. The idea I'd love to convey to you is that the next time a politician comes to you and says, vote for me because I'm pro-life, unfortunately, you're going to have to double-check whether or not he supports the private option because you've got Medicaid dollars going to that to fund abortion, potentially. So that'd be the first thing I would say. But I think a proper response would be, duh, you mean you support life? Oh, okay. Don't act like you're some Einstein for supporting life, please. Please don't act like you're a genius for supporting what is something that is very low-hanging fruit in the state of Arkansas. My encouragement to you is do not elect somebody or vote from somebody based solely on that issue. Don't get me wrong. It's my number one issue. I wouldn't vote for someone who's pro-abortion, right? I wouldn't vote for somebody who thinks abortion should be legal the way it is now. But I think we are past allowing that issue to say, okay, I agree with you here, and it's my most important issue, so I don't care about tax policy. I don't care about regulatory policy. I don't care about your government philosophy. I don't care about what you think you should do for us. I don't care about whether or not you believe government is there to protect our rights, not take them away. I just care about this one thing. Do not let them get by with it, because I promise you there are people out there and Republicans who are in office today that got elected by only talking about the social issues that we all generally agree on, and they completely avoided the stuff that is the biggest problem in Arkansas, which would be people who don't understand the pitfalls of big, out-of-control government, and they don't understand the benefits of a limited government that protects the rights of the people. And see, there's your social issue right there. I'm protecting the rights of the people and the rights of the innocent in mothers' wombs who can't speak for themselves. See, but then you apply that policy to life and abortion, and you match up. You apply that policy to everything else. And that is the problem with Arkansas Republicans in power right now. The establishment, they look at conservatism as an article of clothing that can be put on when needed and taken off when inconvenient. They put the outfit on in front of you down at the Marble Palace. They shed their skin, and they become a part of the system. We've got to take a break. Thank you for listening. Back in just a moment.
The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock, I'm Bob Maloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, the Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. I'm sorry, Bob, the new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? Revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government,
better not tax our patience.
The more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patience will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody.
Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to talk radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
He puts the Paul in politics. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up, I just want to say this. One article down currently right now over at conduitforaction.org. You need to check this out because it's really good. And, it's entitled Credit Where Credit is Due, Recognizing Positives from Conservatives. And it takes us a flashback to the Conduit for Commerce Calvin Coolidge Awards of 2017. Let me say this. While it may get frustrating following what Arkansas politicians are doing in our name to grow government, we should also recognize those legislators who fight for limited government in Arkansas. Earlier this year, Conduit for Commerce held their biennial Calvin Coolidge Heroes of Freedom's Award dinner. This night was dedicated to recognizing those who stand strong on the front lines of cutting the size and scope of government in Arkansas. The award winners were selected solely on their voting records and legislation they sponsored. The awards reflect legislators who voted to 1. Decrease the size of government, 2. Decrease dependency on government, 3. Not spend money we do not have. The awards were given to the top scorers on the Conduit for Commerce scorecard rankings. And the list of the winners Senators Brian King, Linda Collins Smith, Gary Stubblefield, Scott Flippo, Terry Rice, Alan Clark. State Representatives Dan Sullivan, Josh Miller, John Payton, David Meeks, Austin McCullum, Clint Penzo, Brant Smith, Richard Womack, Stephen Meeks, Mickey Gates, and Grant Hodges. The Freedom Bill winners were Senators Linda Collins Smith and Brian King, and State Reps Justin Gonzalez, Robin Lundstrom, Jim Dotson, and Josh Miller. You can check out this article even more to check out the best bills. And look, this is about recognizing that if it wasn't for these people, we'd have an internet sales tax right now to add to the list of the other taxes the establishment did pass. We'll see you tomorrow, Arkansas. Be safe.